Uh, in previous video, we have done MySQL deployment. For the requirement of this video series is like we need to set up a WordPress in two-tier architecture. First tier is MySQL, which we have already done in the last video. This tier is required. This video is required to install the WordPress in the second tier. So the first tier would be MySQL, and the second tier would be the web. So in order to deploy the WordPress, we need to create a Docker image, and so that Docker image will be used to deploy the WordPress application into the Kubernetes. So to build the Docker file, Docker image, we need to create a Docker file. Okay, we need to create a Docker file with the name of Dockerfile. And in this Dockerfile, at this position, I'm assuming that you already have the basic knowledge of Docker. So I'm not going to cover the basics of Docker. I'm just putting more time to deploy the WordPress application. So I'm just using the base image as Ubuntu 16.04, which is very light in size. The next step, I'm going to update the repo. And the very next step, we need to install Apache and Apache 2 utils. Apache 2 and Apache 2-utils. So these two packages required to run the web server, and this web server will serve the in the WordPress web pages. So the next step, we need to install PHP versions or PHP required packages. So for this, again, we need to install the packages, and we would be requiring these packages like PHP 7, PHP 7-MySQL, and the module for Apache, and PHP CLI. So I'm just pasting it that we are requiring PHP 7, PHP 7 MySQL, Apache module for PHP, PHP CLI, PHP CGI, and PHP GD module. These module we would be needed for to run the WordPress, because WordPress runs under the PHP, so we would be needing this to run the PHP code. So the next step, we need to add the WordPress directory. We already downloaded. If you see, we already downloaded the tar file. You can download it from Control Shift. You can download it from this link. So that will be the latest WordPress version, whatever it is. So next step, we need to extract the WordPress files. So here we are. We need to add this to our Docker file. So our Docker file can bundle this to our Docker image. For this, uh, we need to add in the Docker file the argument as add WordPress to the baseline of any Apache is war www, and we would be naming as WordPress. So whenever the Apache get installed, it has the directory with the path of var www html. So in our case, because we want to serve the WordPress at the top level of the web server, so we would be needing to remove the existing var www html folder. So we would be removing rm space minus rf rvf. So we would be using copying and pasting this URL, and then in the next we need to move WordPress to this HTML folder. So we would be moving WordPress folder to WordPress HTML. The next step, we need to change the ownership. So Apache 2 always runs with the www-data for a user. So we would be needing to change the ownership of the folder. So we would be needing to change, and also directory requires the permission of 777, so we would be needing to supply the permission to all files as 7555, all directories to 7555. This is the baseline configuration. We already done that. The next configuration we need to see, we need to configure the WordPress configuration. Like if we go to the, if we want our WordPress to connect with the database. So for this we have a file called wp-config.sample. So at first in our Docker file we would be renaming it as the main file. So first we list down WordPress slash wp config, and this is the file which we need to rename it as a main configuration file. For this we are going to add in the Docker file as well. So run mv this, and sample should be removed, so that will be our main configuration file. Before this we need to go to the waterfall HTML. So we will traverse towards the waterfall HTML, and then we need to move sample configuration file to the main configuration files. The next step, we would be needing to modify some sort of configuration for username and password and database host. So we're gonna copy configuration from this file. So this is our file. The first line we need to copy from here is this line, and we need to change this accordingly. So this is the database name. Before we do the database name, we must need to access and create a database. So user and like we need to create a user, and then we need to create a database as well. So our application can access the database which we're going to define. For this I would suggest to use the multi-tool. Multi-tool can be installed uh, multi-tool can be installed through this command. This command will install the multi-tool in your Kubernetes cluster. I already have installed. So then in order to access our existing MySQL pod, which is right there, so because we already set in the last video. So next step we need to create a database for WordPress and a user for the WordPress as well. So we going to access this one, and from because multi-tool already has everything. So let's see what is the MySQL service name, kubectl get svc. So this is the service by we can connect to our database. So that would be MySQL h, and this is the name MySQL user is root, and -p, and as we remember that our password is password. So we are connected. So first thing we need to create a database. Create database with the name wp store. We can create with any name, so we just need to define. We have created a database. Create database. So we have created one database. Now we need to create a user that is specifically restricted to that particular database. For this I'm going to assign grant all privileges on wp store dot static to the username we're going to use the wp admin at the rate. We're gonna give permission to for remotes as well, because our web server is different. And then we need to say identified by some internet issues. Okay, uh, identified by. Now we need to specify the password, so we are just in the testing phase, so we are just using the password as a password. So we have created the user. Next thing, we need to flush the privileges. So we are done. We just need to check whether we are able to access or not. uh, Same, and now we just need to change the username to wp admin, and the password is password, so we can access it. So wp store is there. Now we need to configure our things. So here's our Docker file. Before we go into the Docker file, we need to identify the resources which need to be configured. The first, we need to configure the WordPress, and then wp config, and we need to copy this line, and this line will contains username. We need to do the sed, and it would be like -i and s at the rate 3 times, and the g, and the first line we need to change, and we would like to replace with our data store name is wp store. We can just copy the database name from here, and then we need to supply the file name. It will be under this location. Okay, next thing, we need to what we need to change is we need to change this line. That will be the database username. So we need to add run sed space -i as at the rate. Okay, we need to, and then here we need to specify the username which we created earlier. So what was the username? That was the wp admin. We just need to specify the username and g and the file name. So we have configured two things. Another thing we need to configure is the last thing which we need to configure is the password. There are four things we need to worry about. We need to specify the password here, which is again password. Okay, the last thing which we need to configure is the host name. So what is the parameter for host name? This line we need to change. We need to change, and we need to supply the service name. This name should be similar to kubectl get SVC, and this should be this name. In Dockerfile we need to define this name. Okay, we have configured our WordPress configuration. The last thing which we need to configure is we need to start our web server. And we are going to use CMD, and we are going to use the exact form, which is the standard way of starting any kind of service. Apache CTL is the main daemon, and then we need to specify a comma, and then we need to specify the first argument we're going to issue is -D, which means runs the process as a daemon. Then we need to again specify a semicolon, a comma, and then in the double quotation we're gonna say run in the foreground. So this is what we need to do. Okay, now we are all done. Now we need to build the Docker image using the docker build space -t and WordPress dash WordPress upbox :10.0, and here is the Docker file. It will install all the dependencies and set up the WordPress for you. This is a bit lengthy Docker file, but I would like to show all the steps which actually requires to test. So our Docker image is being done. So next step, it would need to be pushed to Docker registry. For this, first we need to tag this image. In order to do this, you must need to have an account with the hub.docker.com. I already have my account, so I'm gonna use my Docker repositories. So you can see that I already have, and my repository name is this. So I'm gonna tag my image as Mansoor Ali 901. So you could use your own Docker name, and then okay, I can tag my image as this, and then I'm gonna push that image to the Docker registry. Docker push. So this is gonna be pushing. So the next step, we need to create a deployment file, which I already created to save my time. This is the same deployment file as we done for the MySQL. We just need to change the label, and we also need to change the image name, also the port which we need to expose it. This is the deployment file which we need to use in order to deploy the WordPress. So we are going to create a file called deployment.yaml, and then we're gonna paste this hole, and we just need to verify the image name. This should be the same in the deployment file. So I'm gonna use the same Docker image which I created. So now I need to apply the Kubernetes WordPress deployment. So deployment.yaml. So if I want to see kubectl get pods, so the container is being creating, -w, my container is being started. The last thing which we need to see, we need to expose this WordPress deployment through a node port. So for this I already created a service file. This server file consists as previously we used the node port, so we can access any node IP, and along with the um, separate port. We can use the load balancer, but we don't want to add additional costs to our bill, so we are just using this service.yaml. So the first part, as we already discussed these kind of deployment files in our previous video, so I'm not going to put more time on it. So this is I'm gonna apply. So kubectl get svc. As you can see that our WordPress deployment has been done, and we need to allow this port in our security group to access our service using our worker nodes. So first thing, we need to allow this IP in our security group. For this I need to copy this and go to our AWS console, and here I can allow in my worker node instance. First we need to allow in the master security group. So edit inbound rules. This is the port which I need to change it, because this was previously done by me, so we just need to save the rules. This is on the master. Similarly we need to do this on the worker nodes as well, so we can access through worker node as well. So this is done. Then now next thing which we need to see, we need to see the IP of the worker nodes. We can pick one of those IPs from the worker node, and then we can hit this from our browser. If everything goes well, then we will be able to see our welcome page. So as you can see, the welcome pages comes. We can continue with the test site. I'm just using the basic password. Username I'm going to use is admin, and welcome @1. I can confirm. I don't care about this. Server at server.com. So now installing WordPress. So it will take 1 and 2 minutes to complete the setup, and then it will direct me to the WordPress management console. It's installing WordPress. Okay, now I'm ready to log into my WordPress. As you can see that I am on the dashboard, and the way I deployed WordPress, you can deploy your multi-tier application as well, like where the data store can be different. And if I need to change my service to the load balancer, so I can change it as well. So what it will does, it will spawn up a load balancer for so what it will does, it will spawn up a elastic load balancer for my service. if I see my kubectl gets svc, it is on pending, so it will soon spawn up uh, the elastic load balancer. So it will take like 15 minutes, sometime 10 minutes, 15 minutes, and then you can get access through the elastic load balancer. So it will take a while. Meanwhile, I'm just closing this video for now. In next video, we're gonna see the ingress controllers and rest of the stuffs. So till then, thank you.